Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Kate Galliett, and she is a mountain climbing extraordinaire. I saw a video of her where she was just hanging by her fingernails from this rock. It was very inspiring. But the reason we're talking about this is because it helps her intuition to soar. And we'll look at how her process and how she feels when she's doing that, and how she gets answers to business challenges while she's climbing, and how climbing has amped up the speed of her intuition, and how the modern world that many of us inhabit in front of our computers may be squashing our intuition. And what you can do if you don't happen to have a mountain next door that you can go and climb. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, great to have you on the show. And in case you don't know, Kate, she is a champion for people getting into their bodies and getting fit, and realizing it doesn't matter how old you are, you can always have a happy and healthy body.
Absolutely.
So tell us, why do you climb mountains? Because I don't think everyone listening does that.
I would agree with you. I don't think everyone listening does that either. I found mountain climbing, all types. I do all different varieties of mountain climbing. When I moved west to the mountains after 3 decades in the city of Chicago. At the time, I didn't yet know that I was as outdoorsy as I am, or that I was as passionate about mountain climbing as I am. But I knew something wasn't right in Chicago, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I happened to have a friend out here, and I said, their life looks interesting. I think I'll go out and check that out. And it just felt resonant, 100%. And so I got here and knew I wanted to find some sort of activity to do that wasn't just gym-based, weightlifting and then yoga and those kinds of things. Those are great, but the mountains they're right here. They're in our backyard. And so I began exploring the opportunities for playing in the mountains, and mountain climbing is a big thing here. And so I would follow along with other folks who were doing it and be so inspired by what they were doing, and so curious about if I could do that, because, I was living out the message I try to teach every human in the world, which is it's never too late to start something new. You're never too old, too broken, too weak, too uncoordinated. You're never stuck with whatever you think you are. I was living that out because I would see them climbing and go, how could I get to the point of being able to do that? But I started with that first step of going to the gym where you climb on the mats, right? And going, okay, I didn't die. Let me try the next step, right? And little by little, and then accelerating by accelerating, I found myself being proficient enough to actually go outside and climb a mountain. And the exhilarating feeling of hands on the rock and moving yourself up it by your own power with a rope attached to you or not, depending on the kind of climb you're doing, was like nothing else I'd ever done in my entire life. Everything, any amount of peace I found in nature was 10x'd by adding mountain climbing to it. So for me, that became the thing that I was going to use to feel the most alive and to explore the most in this world. And I know for sure if there's a day that comes that I stop feeling so alive doing it, it's the world kind of pulling me to the next thing, right? But it didn't begin because I've done it for a lifetime. It didn't begin because I had a similar sport that I've done. It began because I felt the pull to get to the mountains to live here, and then saw other people executing on exactly the mission I was trying to live with, teaching people about feeling and moving better. And without much thinking about it, I all of a sudden found myself as a rock climber.
So I'm curious, when you say you felt moved to go near the mountains, you're saying your intuition talked to you, or how did that come to you, that
Great
that
question.
particular information?
I was very successful in a business sense in Chicago. I had a thriving gym that I ran. Customers were on the doorstep. I didn't have to do anything to attract new clients or customers. I had a lovely home that I lived in. I had a lovely neighborhood that I lived in. But everything else in life was deeply unsatisfying. There was no social connection. It was difficult to find romantic connections with men. We just weren't aligning. And nothing else felt very good. And that deep dissatisfaction led me to start asking some questions about, why am I still doing this if I'm so unsatisfied? And could I handle and tolerate throwing away what is quite easy with business and starting over again in a new place? And you some might call it luck, but it was the combination of seeing my friends' posts on Facebook from their weekend out, and they'd be in the mountains, and being like, that's so beautiful. And that same friend asking some very pointed questions to me about, what am I really doing if I'm not feeling satisfied? Like, what's the point of my existence if I'm not feeling thriving and fully satisfied? Those two things together made me go, well, why don't I go see what life is like for them out there and just see their life? And it took 6 days on a visit here. And on that 6th day, I went, oh yeah, I'm supposed to live here. Meaning I would not be able to keep my gym. I would have to move everything online. I'd have to create a whole new social circle, figure out romantic connections in a brand new state with men that I don't know very well or at all. Everything would have to start all over again. And this is the thing, I think, with intuition. It's this nebulous, like, I'm giving away a lot of security of what I think is security, but actually it's ball and chain kind of stuff, and going, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's worth going.
So it was almost like it was fake security.
Yeah.
And that having connection to your intuition and your truth was real security.
Absolutely. And it has taken so much leaning on that in the last 3 years that I've been out here in Utah, because it's not easy. It's a massive change. It's very challenging, right? To learn all these new things that you've never done before and do business in a format I've never done before. And it's very challenging. And the only thing that has held me together sometimes is that deep core knowing that's kind of right here in the solar plexus area, where it goes, this is where you're supposed to be. Just hang in there. You're going to be okay. No matter what hardship you feel like you're facing that day, you're in the right spot.
That's very inspiring. Yeah. So tell us a bit more about how you feel and your process when you are climbing and you're listening. Does it help you listen to your intuition, or? For me, it shows up as a body sensation when I'm out in nature. And I can be sitting underneath a rock climb where we're not using ropes, and so it's staying very low to the ground, and you just sit under it, waiting in between turns to then try climbing it again. Or when I'm on a rope and we're doing a very long, many hundreds of feet rock climb, or even on the hike to the rock climb, it'll take a while to hike to it. Just arriving into nature and to the mountain, something arrives to me that wasn't there 20 minutes before when I was in the car driving to wherever it is we're going to do the rock climb. It arrives all through my torso in my head as sort of as if you can imagine all the puzzle pieces flying through the air and fitting into the correct spots. And it happens all through this area through here. And I think your listeners certainly can relate to some sort of that sensational feeling that comes. So that doesn't sound too crazy to them, I think, or to you. But I can sit there and be staring at the rock or at nothing at all, that kind of just vacant staring you do when you're maybe looking at the horizon. And all of those puzzle pieces come together, and something in my body literally makes more firmness, more resonant, more deep satisfaction feeling. And the answer just arrives from that. It's like the whole piece at the core has to come back together. And then what bubbles immediately up out of that is this answer that is so obvious. I can't believe I had never thought of it before. Does that relate to something you have felt before? Oh yeah. I don't do it by climbing on mountains, but yeah, when I have a clear intuitive message, it's clear it is my inner truth. I'm interested how these different pieces, it sounds like you have pieces of you that reassemble when you're on the mountain or in nature.
Everything within me reshuffles when I'm out in nature or on a mountain. And it's that reshuffling that is one of my favorite parts of being on a mountain, because I can't logic my way into that reshuffling when I'm in the modern world. But if I'm just sitting there staring at the beauty of the mountain or looking at the pine tree that's next to the rock we're going to climb, all of a sudden the reshuffling happens. And it is, I like to say it's not of me, it's through me. And it is of me, of course. We create things all the time, but I'm like, it's like the conduit all of a sudden allowed everything to come in and put itself together in the right fashion. Then it just bubbles right up out of the top of my head. And I go, that's exactly what I'm supposed to do, without any prior thought, without any A, then B, then C thinking. Just, there you go. There's the answer. I love that about nature.
That is amazing, and so useful when you're running a business, because, you know, you could have spent days trying to figure out that answer analytically using your logic.
I've totally done that. The day that you messaged me about that one rock climb you mentioned, that day I was thinking about offerings we were going to do for the holidays, for deals or coupons, or if we even wanted to do that, and was sitting under that rock climb and went, oh, why have I never thought to offer this type of membership before? That makes so much sense. And I didn't have to go, what kind of membership could we offer that, you know, has the best rate of return, that keeps someone the longest, that doesn't cost me much money, that is a fair deal for the person buying? I didn't have to do any of that. It just was as if it went, poof, here you go. And then we ran it, and it was quite successful. We ran it as a holiday deal this year, and I went, we're doing that next year, because that is absolutely something I'm supposed to be offering for people. People liked it. They resonated with it. And it's going to be a win for me and my business as well, too.
That's great.
Yeah.
So do you ask your intuition questions before you go climbing, or when you're in nature, or?
I have started doing that in the last year. Once I realized the power that was in nature and that was in me when I would go into nature, and especially the what would it takes method, kind of just thinking about that as we, you know, you'll be driving away sometimes to get to where you're going to climb, but there's a point where you enter the area that you're about to be climbing in. It's, you know, more woodsy, it's got canyons, it's got big peaks. You're entering a new space when you go into that. And right about that point is when I start bringing up some things I'd like to find clarity on or solutions for, and asking what would it take to find that answer today while I'm out in nature. And then letting that just sit, not continuing to run question after question after question. It's almost as if the logic brain can't stay on for me when I'm out in nature, when I'm thinking about these sorts of things. Sure, yes, my logic brain is on when we have to think about being safe or traveling efficiently through the mountains or making sure no one dies while we're out there. But yes, the logic brain's on for that. But with the things that I'm ruminating on and considering and trying to find solutions to or intuitive answers to, that posing of the question on the way in is there. And then it goes into the background to where it's there, but I'm not really paying attention to it until that answer pops up and the pieces have put themselves together.
That is a great suggestion there for people using that what would it take question, that, you know, if you don't get an immediate answer, be okay with letting it sit, and it may pop up at an unexpected moment later.
Absolutely. I think especially if we're so stuck in our focus mind sometimes, kind of that narrow focus, it can be tricky for the answers to show up, because we're looking for the blue car, right? But we're so specific and looking for the blue car that some other thing that is like the blue car, which is what we're supposed to actually see and go drive away into, is right there next to us, but we can't see it until we open up to look at all cars, for example.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. It helps to play around with the questions we ask ourselves and to be open to different things coming in. I mean, I guess that would be the basis of allowing, right? That we don't control everything about how the solution is going to appear.
Absolutely. It's such a vital lesson to learn as well.
So when you've done this and you've got these amazing answers on the rock face, is there any way you bring this speeding up your intuition back to when you're in your home office in front of your laptop?
For me, there are two things that help me speed that up in my daily life. One is take advantage of where I live, and I go into the mountains every week without fail, whether that's just to take a drive up to them and just sit in my car and, you know, at the parking lot up at the top and look at the peaks, or to go on a short walk or a long walk or go on a mountain climb or something like that. So consistent repetition for me is vital. And then secondary to that is actually making sure I take lots of photos while I'm out there. And I will flip through the photos on my phone on a regular basis, almost in not a mind-numbing way, but in almost a mind-awakening way. Like remembering the good times, remembering what it felt like to stand in that spot, looking back at the pictures and just being re-fascinated by that space that I was in again, often does a similar thing where it's almost like my thinking brain gets to go, oh, get a little bit of a break here. And then it gives room for the intuitive aspect of me to go, hey, here's a thing for you, poof, right into your brain. And it can show up from there. I also find too that if I'm working on something that is going to require, or seems like it's requiring something I'm not figuring out logically, and I'm going, oh yeah, you need to tune into your intuition, I make a point to get into nature as quickly as I can to find the workaround for that. And that can be, sometimes that's a Tuesday afternoon, and I don't have time to go take a drive all the way up into the mountains. So I'll go sit outside, or if it's cold, I won't maybe sit, I'll go walk and just do a walk around the neighborhood or the area where I'm working that day. Because even the aspect of moving your body just in a natural, easygoing way, off of concrete if possible, like if you can walk on grass or in a park, something like that, and just to look at the sky and to notice things around you. In fact, I work from my home office where I am today many days per week, and I'll take a midday walk after lunch. And you'll believe this, but people not in this realm probably would be like, how could that happen so quickly? I walk out the garage door and I make a turn and I start to head up the street. And there are 2 bushes about 20 feet past where I leave my house from. And every time I will look at those and be like, I've never noticed that thing on that bush before. Or look at the detail, look at the beauty of just what nature has created. And all of a sudden I'm into the intuitive kind of thoughts are reshuffling, picture and puzzle pieces are coming together. The picture's becoming clear. That's within 20 feet of leaving my house. And so I almost will be like, I've already got the answer. I may as well just go back in. But I'll carry on and do about 15 to 20 minutes just walking down the neighborhood and back again and noticing all the detail of whatever. Dead flowers after the summer season has passed, snow on the ground if there happens to be snow. Of course, when spring is happening, it's like a psychedelic experience just walking around your neighborhood because everything is waking up. Even that allows me to have that on a regular, consistent basis when maybe there's a reason I can't get into the mountains until the weekend and I need an answer now,
I mean, I'm wondering, as well as seeing the beauty and the detail of those plants, do you also see their aura or their energy? Or
I see what they're doing. I see how they're organizing and how they're allowing and how they're easing and how even in their death, in the case of like, we just went through autumn here, that they're creating the next life and creating the next, what it's like? It's as if I'm tapping into the energetic system of the entire universe. And from that is always a wellspring of ideas and directions you're to go in, because every idea is either growing something new, executing on something that exists, seeing something that's going to be, dying here soon. And so nurturing that process, handling the winter when things aren't growing. It's all quite seasonal. And so seeing what they're doing allows me to find that intuitive answer of, oh, this is the phase that I'm in, or here's how I can handle this situation better, right? Seeing a dead leaf on the ground and admiring its beauty and how it's disintegrating into the ground to be nurtured for spring, handling interpersonal things or handling tough conversations with employees, that gives me some understanding and framework and compassion that when I'm in my logic brain is like, I don't like what they're doing. How do I help them do this better without being a jerk about it? How do I be a good, boss, or how do I be a good friend? Or do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So when you've experienced nature and the seasons, how does that make your response differently to an employee who isn't performing?
I find that nature and the seasons with employees who aren't performing the way I'd like them to is making sure that it reminds me to make sure that they know there's a seasonal nature to this and that they don't need to jump ahead or that they're lagging behind, and that their nature is to continue progressing here, not to get stuck at the one thing that they are good at and then never continue to progress as an employee for me. And also me having compassion for where they're at, whether they know it or not, in the employee-employer relationship with me, and finding out how I can clarify that even further. Like, hey, employee who's been with me for a year now, it's been a year. Here are things we talked about having you achieve. We've achieved some of them. You've not achieved others. But you're no longer in that spring phase of just being born and everything's new and interesting and there's lots to look at and it's very beautiful. You know, you're kind of coming into your summer now, and summer is where you go out there and you execute on all the things you just created. Like, okay, can we acknowledge it, that that's what you're heading into? Now, how can we put actual data points in place? Do you need more coaching? Do you need to own it more? Do you need to improve your own intuition to trust yourself more? Do you see what I'm saying? How that kind of helps me have compassion for me and for them, and to also think about this, where they're at on the cycle of the entire thing, and how can I help that be better for them?
No, that sounds great. Now, you mentioned there you might help them improve their own intuition. Tell us more about that, because that sounds very empowering to people who have employees or contractors.
I do my best with it, and I will say I am a work in progress, and I still work to untether from I learn it best this way, so everyone should learn it best this way. But I'm a huge fan, and this is a big part of what I teach people with movement and fitness, which is you already have the answers inside of you. I can teach you exercises and science and how the human body responds at a cellular level, and that's important to know when you want to care for your body. But you already know what your body needs. Once you know how to give that to your body with the movements or drills or whatever, you don't need me. And in fact, I don't want that responsibility, because I've got my own body to tend to. The same is true with how I want to have my employee-employer relationships, or even with contractors as well. I want to be able to have an initial period where we set groundwork, frameworks, objectives, goals, why we're doing this whole thing. But that's what people with bodies do too. They go, I want to climb the mountain. I can't yet. How do I do that? And then teach them the concepts and frameworks, and then let them say, you can do this. I don't want the responsibility of making the decision for you. I actually need you to be able to do that on your own, and never tell me about it. I want you to do it and then share it with me. But if I can teach them the frameworks and the concepts we use to execute and create the responses we want, I then start putting the reins into their hands to say, I'd like you to tell me what needs to happen next. And then we'll dialogue about that. And often, initially, this is where I get to grow, my initial reaction when they'll be like, I think the wording on the sales copy needs to be improved because we've had X, Y, and Z experience that tells me people don't really understand that part of the sales copy. And of course, my initial reaction is, I'm pretty sure they're wrong. I'm pretty sure I actually wrote really great sales copy. I'm pretty sure that I see where they're coming from, but I'm pretty sure they're incorrect. So then I get to feel that come up and go, calm down, ego. You get to calm down. And then I get to step back and really lean in to this intuitive response they've created because they have the framework that we've already constructed in the past. And I get to go, what am I hearing them say? Okay, what am I feeling come up when they say this? When I put myself in the shoes of the consumer that we're talking to. Okay, now I can see where this is at. And now we get to have a dialogue about it. And what comes out of that is always better than me singularly saying, we're going to do this. And me singularly saying what they decided is wrong, because that doesn't help them have any motivation to do more of that in the future. They might be wrong. They might be totally in left field because they don't have a framework that I do, that then I get to go, oh, I see why you're saying that sales copy isn't great. But actually, when you look at it through this framework, it's meeting this need. And the person can go, oh, that makes sense. But how about this? And then we can take it and spin it once again and find yet another solution that I would not have found on my own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. That sounds great.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious, do you think climbing mountains has helped you lead your staff better, and if so, how?
Absolutely. Yes. You need to have a reverence and a patience with a mountain that brings such a groundedness into my daily interactions with my team and with my customers and with people on the internet who are like, you're an idiot. And I'm like, okay. Because we all have those people on the internet who want to argue and fight and whatever. And I don't give much time to all of that. But those moments when you can feel your ego wants to get revved up and your logic brain wants to be like, we're right. We know we're right. We can figure this out ourselves. When you're on a mountain, you don't have room to have an ego because you'll die if you do. If you have an ego about it, you will move, truthfully, you will move more rigidly. You won't move as in flow. You won't tap into every aspect of your body, which you need when you're in some of the positions, and you've got to reach for this other one up here and make sure your whole body stays in control over here. You won't do it as well. And you'll make more foolish decisions when you operate from ego and logic. And that's absolutely true of rock climbing. Same with hiking or camping or anything else you do out in nature. You need to drop your ego and have reverence and always be saying what feels right and what seems right tactically in this situation. Is that based in truth, or is that based in my egoic desire to get to the top, even though it's really starting to seem like that's not the right thing for me today? I've had this happen on hikes before where I was intent on summiting the mountain that day, just hiking my way up there, not having to climb. And the weather pattern started to change. And I could have pursued it further, but something in me stopped. In fact, oh gosh, can I share this story with you?
Sure.
The last time that I was trying to hike to the top of a mountain called Pfeifferhorn here in the Wasatch. And it's a challenging hike, and it requires most of a day. And you get to this place called Lower Red Pine Lake. And it's kind of the stopping point where everybody changes their gear for the summit push they're going to do, has a snack, admires the beautiful lake, and then starts on your way up to the final push. And I got to that point. It was like, all right, I've made great time. This is awesome. I got to switch my gear for my winter gear now. The wind is picking up. I'll put my coat on. And the clouds were kind of rolling around in this beautiful, low, kind of hazy way. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw a deer just off to the side, around on the other side of the lake. And I went, oh. And I looked, and there were actually 5 deer, which is the most I've ever seen together in this part of the mountain range that I was in. And I was watching them, and they had babies with them, and they were kind of trotting along the lake, and they were eating and stopping, and they saw me, but they didn't run away. And they kind of kept making their way. Well, with nature, you want to always give them your space, their space. And so I kept quite a distance. I didn't approach or force them to make an action. I just kind of let them, okay, they'll get off the path eventually. In the 15 minutes it took them to get off the path so that I could start my way around and start the push up to the summit push, the weather changed so dramatically that had I been on that summit push, it would have been dangerous for me to be up there. But something about me going, let me give them their space. Let me just stand and watch this. You know, I was on a time goal, but it's okay. I want to, these deer were helping me to lean into that intuition and actually kept me from having what could have been a difficult situation that day of being on the top of a mountain in bad weather that would have been very difficult to get down from. So that is what I'm talking about when I say, like, the egoic mind would have been like, stupid deer, get them out of the way. I'll just walk past. They'll shuffle off and they'll get scared. And then I'll continue on. And I would have continued on into potential danger. That's happening all the time out in nature. You just have to chuck the ego enough to be able to have that gap between thinking you're going to do something and then actually doing it, right? Dr. Wayne Dyer always called it getting in the gap, you know, having the experience and then responding to the experience. In between that is the gap. That is required if you're going to travel safely through the mountains. And when that comes back with me to my daily life, where I get to have a moment before I respond to an employee situation or a customer who's unhappy or thinking about my next business idea and being frustrated that it's not here yet, that gap, that pause, that checking the ego at the door allows me to return to that grounded, intuitive state that I was experiencing so readily when I was in the mountains.
That is intriguing. And I just wondered if there was some spiritual meaning to the deer in particular, as opposed to some other animal turning up there. I don't know if you...
I've thought about that as well too. And I've read many different things about deer showing up in your path, mostly that it's good luck. But some of the spiritual readings I've found on the internet about deer say about finding new things or discovering new ways, or something new is showing up in your life. And it's funny that happened then. Now that the puzzle piece just clicked in. That was kind of at the onset of a new wave of energetic stuff that has been showing up for me in my life. So you might be totally right that there was that it wasn't some other animal that certainly could have, because we have other animals in the Wasatch. It was 5 deer, the most deer I've ever seen at one time in the Wasatch.
Yeah, I mean, I take a lot of notice of animals that turn up, particularly if it's an unusual animal showing up, or an unusual number, or the direction they're pointing in, because there's usually information from my intuition in that. Yeah. When I read about deer, let me just read what I found, because it's kind of interesting. When you have deer as a spirit animal, you're highly sensitive and have a strong intuition. By affinity with this animal, you have the power to deal with challenges with grace. You master the art of both being determined and gentle in your approach. So,
That sounds so resonant to me right now. I appreciate you looking that up and reading that. Thank you.
yeah, I'll put it in the show notes so people can find, and you can find it later.
Cool. Thank you.
So, and there's a great, if you're into animal science for intuition, there's a great book called Animal Speaks by Ted Andrews.
Okay.
And that like lists lots of animals and, gives a default message they may have. I mean, obviously an individual animal may have a particular message for us, but
I would enjoy reading something like that. So I'll look that book up and put that in the queue next for reading. Because I agree with you. I think we notice certain things because there's something in them for us. There's infinite amount of things you could notice when you're out in nature. So why do I notice certain trees or certain bark markings where, an animal has kind of rubbed up against it, or things on the ground? We notice things because there's something to it. Because there's so many things you could look at. Why do you happen to notice that particular thing other than what you're talking about here, which is some sort of intuitive connection or message that realm has for you to capture,
Yeah, I mean, I live half the year in the mountains in Cusco, Peru, and they're very beautiful. And I think, and so do the local people, that there are spirits in the mountains. That every mountain has a spiritual entity as part of it. I wonder if you've experienced any of that in your
I have.
mountain.
Absolutely. There's a mountain here called Mount Timpanogos, and it is the most beautiful mountain. And I know when I say that, people who aren't into mountains will be like, it's a mountain. I don't, what are you seeing? But let me tell you, Mount Timpanogos is part of the Wasatch, and her profile, it's definitely a she. Her profile is that of we used to say Indian princess, but indigenous person, princess, sleeping with her arms on her chest like this. So the mountain profile, when you're going along the side of it from a distance back a ways, you'll look at it, and it's as if you see the forehead and her nose, and then you see it kind of come down, and you see her hands laying on her chest like this, and it looks as if it's a Native American or indigenous person, princess, laying on her back. And the spiritual energy around that mountain is incredible. When you drive through the canyon to get to the point where you're going to start hiking, so you'll drive, for people who don't know, when there's mountains, you always enter through the canyon and then you start working your way up from there. In the autumn, it is as if it has been painted in gold. She is so regal, and it's as if all of the queen's jewels have been laid out and all of the majesty has been put out. The leaves are the closest to real gold you could ever see in nature. The light, the way it comes through, like makes iridescence through everything. It is the most mind-blowing thing. And it goes along with that legend of like, she is this regal princess, this beautiful, strong, indigenous woman. And in the autumn time, all of her wares, all of her riches get laid out for you in the canyon. And she also is a take no prisoners mountain. So you have to have your head on when you're heading up on that mountain. And in fact, for the winter season, when all the hiking trails are covered over, alpine climbers, people who climb things like Everest, where they have to use snow tools, and it's very wintry and cold, they'll actually practice on her, and they'll do little training missions on her to practice their skills. And it's well known in the community that you need to show up ego fully checked and very aware that she is in control here and you are doing the dance with her, not the other way around. It's marvelous, and you can see her from several vantage points in the Wasatch, and it is one of everybody's favorite mountains because no matter where you see her from, you can see the outline of the princess, and you can feel the like radiating energy of that mountain from a great distance away.
Sounds amazing.
It's where I would take you. If you came to visit Utah, I would take you down there and go, do you see the princess? Now let's go drive through. Let's take a look at her. Yeah.
Do you talk with the mountain spirits? Or
Absolutely. I mean, when I'm hiking from a distance from the mountain I just told you about, Timpanogos, as soon as she comes into view, because you'll look at your map. I have maps on the wall behind me here in the office here of all the mountain ranges here in the Wasatch. So you know where you're going and when you're going to run in and finally see the mountain range, you know, that you're looking for. And she'll come into view and I'll go, oh, there you are. Hello. It is so good to see you. You're so beautiful. And just praising and complimenting and all of that. And then you just stand there and you feel this like back and forth happening between you and the mountain, whether it's one in the great distance like Timpanogos or the one that you're actually standing on here. But most of the conversation coming from me to the mountain is gratitude, 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 gratitude. Like, thank you for everything. Thank you for this. I have the best gratitude practice when I'm in the mountains. And what seems to come with that pump system of me giving out that gratitude is those answers coming back. Because even in my moments where there's heartache or hardship or pain of some kind, and I go to the mountains to try to find some healing, even as I'm like very upset or emoting or whatever, I'll be like, thank you so much for just being a place for me to go to. And again, very quickly, the deck reshuffles, the puzzle pieces get put together, and I get a new perspective on this heartache or hardship or extreme challenge that I feel like I'm facing. And it becomes, again, more grounded and more centered. And there's an answer there for me that wasn't there before when I was just in the emotional state of kind of modern life, you know?
That's amazing. So what other spirits do you talk to? You talk with mountains, but
yes, also with my little crystals. So I've got.
Let's see your crystals.
Yeah, I've got a little altar over here. So I've got a citrine, and currently for today I brought a citrine over, and I've got a black onyx, which this one actually has a face in it. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it through the camera, but there's his little face. Like that's the nose pointing downward right here.
Oh yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So to be grounded, because sometimes I get so excited that I get a little flighty, and then also to just radiate my truth with you today. But I'll have a chat with them. In fact, we just had the full moon at the time of recording this, so I just had them out bathing in the moonlight. So with them, also with my my questioner cards, which I think I think this is similar to what you do, but I appreciate these as an addition. But like inquiry cards, where I get to ask a question about, you know, this one says, what is my heart saying? And I'll journal about that. And I'll kind of ask these guys like, hey, what should I be paying attention to today? And then I'll kind of journal on that. Then I go into my, what would it take stuff after that? Because sometimes the question will come up like this one, what do I really want? And I'll be like, oh, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that lately. And then I'll do, what would it take to get what I really want? So I kind of use this as a complement to what you teach about. And then whenever I see an owl, I'm pretty sure an owl is one of my spirit animals. Whenever
I would imagine if you see them a lot.
Yeah. Yes. That I'll see one and go, what do you got for me? Because whether it's like a real one, like a real actual owl, or the something like they're on a pillow or they're on a piece of artwork, it'll catch my eye enough that I go, oh, you're here. You have a message for me. What do you got for me? And trying to in the space of wherever I'm at, open up a bit of the solar plexus to kind of allow that to come in. So yeah, those are some of the main things that I'll talk to and ask for guidance and assistance from.
That's great. Well, I've got a little crystal here.
Oh, beautiful.
What do they call it? Oscillated quartz. You can see it's got little lines of I guess they're metal of some kind. I don't know. But I also program my crystals as well. So
I haven't started learning about that yet. Do you have a resource that you could perhaps tell me about?
I made a video the other day.
Did you?
On my Facebook Live. So
I'll
link to the video.
Please do. I would really enjoy watching that.
Yeah. You basically just use your intent to program it, and you're conscious about what programming you apply to the crystal. So
very cool. Yes, I'd like to learn more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got like half a dozen crystals I've programmed here, and then I have some others I've given to other people I've programmed.
Do you travel with the same crystals all the time? Because I do.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sleep with them under my bed. And,
same. Oh my gosh, I do that as well too. They'll go under my pillow, and it's kind of a nice feeling when I'll, stir a little bit in the night and turn over to the other side, and I'll have my hand under the pillow, and I go, oh, there it is, and then I can go back to sleep with that. Yeah.
If I wake up in the night, I'll put them on my chakras. So I'll put one on my third eye and one on my throat and solar plexus and so on. And I actually have a crystal around my neck. It's an oscillate. I don't know if you can see it. It's oscillated.
That's lovely.
Is it onyx, or it's one of those grounding?
Looks like onyx.
Yeah, something like that.
I like that.
Along with a couple of things for clearing out electromagnetic fields. But if I remember correctly, this one clears out old patterns in my life. So
I love it.
Yeah. So I have some. I have a lot of crystals. Well, this is almost turning into the crystal show and tell. But given the title was, climbing mountains, and mountains are made of rock.
I mean, that's where we go from,
So I have a ring here. Whoops, there we go. This is Sephirite, which comes from Siberia.
Wow,
and
that's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's good for the third eye. And
to anyone who might be like, okay, well, I don't get the crystals thing, like, this is the earth with you. Like, this is nature in my home office, It's a form of what the earth has been doing for millennia,
Yeah.
So it's one way to bring that into your daily life when maybe you can't go to the mountains.
Exactly. And I won't go through, I've got a whole bunch here that I wear around my neck usually.
Wow.
I won't go through all of them, but there's one here that's really cool, and you can see that.
That's awesome.
That's molderite, and that's actually from a meteorite, so it came from outer space.
Very good. I love it. I think this stuff's awesome.
It is. So that one's good for connecting with alien stuff.
Cool.
In fact, I had to reprogram that one because it was bringing far too many alien energy into me.
We want just enough alien, not too much that it's disruptive.
There you go. Yes. So it is whatever. The other thing I asked what other spirits you talk to. I sometimes talk with the ones in my computer and phone and any technological stuff, because they all have spirits too.
That's good. Interesting you bring that up. I had forgotten about Hank, the spirit elf who lives in my phone. I named him.
Love it.
So mostly he's a trickster, but we have a chat sometimes because he's just being a little too trickster. But things like, you'll type with your thumbs, which is so annoying to do. I try to be on my keyboard whenever I can. But I'll type, and I've typed it correctly, and then it goes to, I hit send, and that's when it goes, oh, we think you meant this other word or something like that, and it'll do the most ridiculous words that I never meant to actually say. And so I knew.
Maybe you did, though.
Maybe I did.
Maybe another part of you did, right?
I think it was Hank, frankly.
It was
he
Hank,
runs on the phone. And whenever I need him to just kind of calm down from the trickster ways a little bit, I kind of say, hey, buddy, okay. But what I appreciate about him, because it's easy to just be like, stupid technology, it's not working right. What I appreciate is he makes me slow down. And one of my missions for this year was to not slow down in the sense of not work hard or anything like that, but to just not be 5 steps ahead of myself all the time. And what Hank does is sometimes make me stop before I hit send and reread it to make sure nothing's been changed, the auto change, that the wording was correct, or that it's opening the thing I'm trying to open, which app I'm trying to open. He makes me slow down.
That's great. It's very generous of him.
Me sometimes. Yeah, he makes me slow down.
Yeah. And it's great that you talk with him, because, it's so easy to get frustrated with technology, and it's quite possible to talk with these different elements of our life.
Absolutely.
And sometimes they even have messages like that to slow down, or whatever the other message we get from them are.
Absolutely.
What about in your body? Do you talk to your body parts, your organs, or your cells?
That's a great question, because I do. We have what's called a time.
See, I knew you did.
So, first of all, when I'm coaching, there's 2 things I'd like to say about this. When I'm coaching clients with movement and fitness and healing their aches and pains and that sort of thing, one of the things we do is learn to converse with our body, because our bodies are always trying to help us. They never are trying to hurt us. They're never trying to do things to make us suffer. They're just hearing you say, I want to do the squats. But your knees are like, guys, we don't have the capacity yet to bend in that fashion without causing pain. And so your brain, your nervous system, your body, your that being is going, well, she wants to do the squats, guys. Like, we got to just do the squats no matter what. Like, we'll just do our best. And so when I'm teaching them, part of that is retraining them to say, hey, body, thanks for trying to give so much force and tension around the knees because you think that's what we need to do. But actually, we've been teaching you this new way where you use your thigh muscles more and you use your torso to stay braced more and you move in this slightly new way. So, hey, thank you for trying to create that tension around the knees. But actually, you don't have to do that anymore. And getting into that conversation with our body to allow it to not need to work so hard to do something it's just trying to do, because it just learned that was how it had to do it in the past, and that's not how it has to do it anymore. So that conversation is happening all the time as I'm teaching people about how to inhabit their bodies again and move without pain and move with freedom and become strong or mobile or whatever they want to do. The second part of that, which is a bit further down the road for my clients, because it takes a little more of that awareness to be built and be skillful with before they can get to this. But I do, and what I teach some of my more advanced clients to do is have a town hall meeting with their body, because your heart has an agenda, and both the physical, literal, cellular heart, but also the heart, the emotive heart has an agenda. Your brain has an agenda. Your nervous system has an agenda. Your stomach has an agenda. Your tissues have an agenda. Everybody has an agenda. And if nobody ever gets together to have a town hall meeting of sorts of like, hey, what do you guys need? Okay, well, that is not something we really want to do because we have this other agenda, but how can we compromise on this? If you never do that, everybody is trying to push their agenda forward without any sort of harmony for your body. And so sometimes it takes stopping. And I got this idea. It came to me when I was on the table getting body work done by a very intuitive master of manual touch that I used to get to see. She's since moved very far away, and that's great for her, but I miss her dearly every day. I was on the table getting work done, and I was like talking about the various things going on in my body, and I go, it's almost like I need to have a town hall meeting. And she and I looked at each other and locked eyes and went, that's exactly what needs to happen. That's it.
Oh, wow.
That concept is what has to happen for folks to get everybody on the same page, because your whole body's trying to help you. But if your brain wants to do one thing and your muscle tissues and cells want to do another thing, that's going to be a competing interest. And even if you can push the ball forward on both of those, you'll never push it as far forward with as much ease as when you get them both to be harmonized and aligned and then move forward from there. So yeah, I talk to my body quite a bit.
That is wonderful. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know if you climb in a team as well as solo, but if you were with a group of people and they all had their own agenda and they were all going in different directions, it would be kind of hard to climb the mountain.
You're absolutely correct in that. When you have a partner, when you're on a rope, you'll always have a partner, and they're below you, kind of keeping the rope in line so you don't fall to your death, basically. So it's pretty important that you two are on the same page. And I have had to climb with someone who I was friendly with but hadn't climbed with before. And then we started climbing together, and I realized very quickly that there was no way we were going to get on the same page, because they were very ego-driven and they were very intense, and they weren't about creating connection. They were about, it's my way, you're along for the ride. You got to do it my way. And I was like, well, it doesn't work that way, friend, because there's two humans here, and you have to compromise everybody's stuff together.
Plus a mountain.
Yeah, plus a mountain, right? So, and very quickly I was like, oh, I'll never do that again. Like, it taught me to vet people a little bit more. We'll climb in the gym together and kind of mesh over that before we go outside where it really matters. But yeah, very much
how do we apply that lesson to the people we work with, whether they're staff or clients?
Well, if you're coming from it from the perspective that I come from, it's that we can be very excited to get the outcome. So climbing partner, yay, that means we get to go climb the mountain if I have a partner, before we actually have vetted who they are, how they show up in the world, what their agenda is, how intuitive they are, how in touch they are. And if you're going to run a business that uses intuition in any way, which obviously if you're watching this, you are, those things matter to you. And I think sometimes we can be quick to overlook those because we found somebody who's a right fit on paper, or somebody who seems like they're going to help us push the agenda forward. But we haven't actually really vetted all the other things that are going to go into how they show up for achieving the mission or climbing the mountain or, you know, getting the objective that we're going for.
Mm. So how do you do that with climbing partners? You said you look for it. They use their intuition, that you feel there's a fit.
Yeah, you can feel it very quickly. You might have a great time with them, be great social buddies with them, and then you'll go to the gym where you can practice like smaller rock climbs together with ropes and all of that. And you'll get a feel for their energy, how rigid they adhere to a system, how unrigid they are to it. You know, you want that happy medium of they adhere to the system of safety, but not to the point of it's my way or the highway, and you don't have an opinion in this at all, even though you're my partner, right? And you should have an opinion in this. You can pick up on how much they pay attention, how much ownership they take. You can pick up on all of that in just 1 or 2 times going to the gym climbing with them. And I think similar things can be done in business where you give someone, you know, a trial basis, right? Maybe an early project that you're going to do with them, and you give them something that you know they can do, but it allows you to see how they're going to show up for it. How do they handle themselves when they have a deadline? How are they under stress? How are they in relating to you? When you give them the reins, do they turn into a big jerk about it and their ego overtakes everything? I think you can pick up on those things, but sometimes maybe we overlook it because we think in the logical sense of they're a right fit on paper, or they're the right price for what, you know, for what I want to pay to have somebody do the job. When really that job will be such a challenge to get done if energetically it just doesn't line up.
Mm. And then let's translate that into working with clients.
Yeah, when I meet with folks, we start with an initial appointment, and that's partially for them to get some answers about some initial understanding of what's going on with their body. I get lots of people who've had injuries for a long time and are trying to get back to some level of basic function and then building strength beyond that to do sports they love to do. But part of that initial meeting is for me to give them a few answers of like, well, this is how your body works. This is why this is happening. I can see this is happening with how you move. But also it's for me to evaluate them as an individual and where they're at on their journey, because nobody's wrong for me in terms of a match. They just might be at a different level of the journey, in which case it's going to be so much work to bridge the gap that it just makes more sense for them to be with someone else and for me to be with someone else. And I actually have a really solid example of this. I was interviewing and assessing the movement with this one individual, and on paper, I absolutely know I can help this individual. I know what went wrong. I know how to help them retrain their body so that doesn't happen again and they become strong again. However, in the intake, they were telling me about how this one big injury that I was going to help them with happened. And they said, and this, I sat there dumbfounded after they said this, but that's just where they're at, you know? They said, you know, I was moving into this one position during my workout, kind of some sort of jujitsu kind of thing. And I knew my joints couldn't handle that position. And I did it anyways. And then I felt the pop. And I was like,
Ow.
Wait, what? Like, and it was a pretty catastrophic injury. Like, there were so many signals the body gave this person before the pop of the actual breaking tear thing that happened that they ignored and either couldn't hear, or once they heard them, they just were like, nah, and they went on anyways. That was all it took for me to be like, we actually have to wrap it up here, because I think you'd be in much better hands with somebody else, because someone who's that disconnected from the signals their body is sending them means they're nowhere near where I'm at with coaching on the journey. The amount of time it's going to take me to bring them forward in their consciousness and their connection is going to be, it would be weeks before we even get to working on the initial injury, because there's so much awareness creating that has to happen. And they may not even be interested or ready for that. And watching this person kind of go on after that, I was like, okay, nope, they're not. They want to put the Band-Aid on the issue and not get to the stuff underneath it of to like why all that happened in the first place. So it was a correct choice. They weren't the right fit for me, because I don't just give the Band-Aid. I go, we got to understand why this happened and how you can tune in better next time and how you can pick up on these signals, because that is part of being autonomous, is hearing the signal and then responding to it.
Mm. So we talked earlier a bit about, you know, when bodies get in pain. What do you think pain is?
It is a wonderful conversation piece from your body. Pain's necessary. If we had a life without pain, like if it were impossible to feel pain, think about how you would burn your hand every time you touch the stove because it's hot, and you'd lose all the skin on your fingertips, and then you'd get an infection and you'd die. But because you touch the hot stove and you go, ah, and you pull back, you recognize a burn has happened. Don't do that again, because I will lose the skin and then I will die from infection. You maybe don't think that consciously about it, but you know that intuitively. Don't do that again. So if we never felt pain, we would never survive the universe. Pain is a tool for us to understand where we're at in the world, things we should do more of, or things we should do less of, or things we should pay attention to. It's really a conversation voice as much as intuition or logic or anything else is. And so while it's not desirable to be in pain, when pain shows up, it's something that's telling you, hey, pay attention. And that allows you then to learn and grow and become aware of something you hadn't been paying attention to before.
That's a great way to look at it. So that person you were helping, and they hadn't listened to their earlier smaller pains, and the pain got bigger, and then they ignored it, and then they had an injury.
Yeah. And again, it's your choice to listen to it, right? So they didn't listen to it even after the injury. And so they've just gone on in the process of putting the Band-Aid on it, which means they've not changed the pattern of how they respond to their signal. So something in the future might happen again, but something eventually, I think, because every human's capable of it, something eventually will kick them into enough awareness to be like, I never even knew my body was talking to me. Oh my gosh, I have all these signals I could start listening to. That's my hope, that everybody sooner or later wakes up to that. I get to catch people when they're on the way to being woken up to that, or when they've just woken up to it, or when they know this is a thing, but they don't know what the signal's saying. They're like, I know pain's a thing. It's a thing I should pay attention to, but I don't know what it means or how to fix it because they didn't go to school for science or whatever, you know? So I get to work with those folks, and everyone else who's willfully ignoring kind of that conversation, that's fine. They're just at a different, that's fine. They'll get there eventually, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the way I think of it, the body parts will kind of tap me on the shoulder. Hey, Michaela, you need to pay attention here. And then they're like, hey. Yep. And then it's like, whap.
Yep. And some people have to get the whap.
Yeah. And if you don't pay attention to that, there's always the reset button, reincarnate, come around again. Maybe you'll
I
get
feel
it
the
next
same
time.
way. Yep. I feel the same way.
Because this isn't just body injuries. This is like any disease that people have.
Dis-ease. You know?
Yeah, literally the word disease. It's lack of ease in that part of your body. So it's and I think the same thing applies to our businesses. You know, if there's pain in some part of our business, that's a message to us from our business.
Absolutely. When I get frustrated that, you know, email 4 in the funnel isn't getting the same open rates, and I'm like, but it's a good email, you guys, you should be reading this. It's a great email. That's the initial egoic response, right? And then I get to go, this is inviting me to learn something about why people aren't opening email 4 in the funnel, because it's the best email. What can I do? Can I put it earlier? Can I change the subject line? So it invites me, if I would like to invite myself into the opportunity to learn and to grow from that. And sometimes it takes a little while to want to go into it. I just want to sit in my, guys, it's a good email. You should just open it the way it is. But even that, you're right. Any pain in our business is an invitation to find out what that means and to explore and find a new answer for ourselves.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about the modern world and what that does to our intuition.
I really think it squishes it in a lot of ways, because we spend our day in narrow focus. So if you don't know the different types of focus, Les Femi wrote a great book called The Open Focus Brain, or Dissolving Pain is another great book of his. And he talks about, in particular, diffuse focus, which is kind of that, think of when a cat is lounging on maybe the back of a chair, sunning themselves, not really paying attention to anything. You can't really, their eyes are open, but you can't really tell if they're even awake. And then let's say that would be diffuse focus. And then let's say a mouse runs across the floor. Instantaneously, that mouse lasers in on it, and the cat lasers in on the mouse and is like, that's something to pay attention. We spend our whole day in that narrow focus. We're looking at the mouse all day long in the modern world, with notifications, with emails, with creation, with revenue, and drive. It's that masculine drive, right? And there's benefit to that. But when you live in that 99% of your life, that squishes your capacity for that diffuse, expansive, look out at the horizon, at something in the distance that isn't anywhere near you. Allow your mind to wander. Think of when you were a kid and you'd lay on your back. Hopefully you had this experience as a kid. You'd lay on your back and look up at the clouds and you try to imagine shapes. You could see the horse and do you see the dolphin? And if you're laying with your buddy, they'd go, do you see the Batmobile? And you'd be like, yeah, I think I do. Like you don't see the Batmobile, but you're trying to see it in the cloud formation they're looking at. That is happening when you go out into nature, whether it's a walk around the block or a hike on a mountain or summiting a mountain by rock climbing. And the modern world takes you so far away from that you lose your capacity to imagine new possibilities, to see things that aren't really there, but that are really there, and to find that diffuse focus again. So as great as the modern world can be for so many things, it allows folks like you and I to talk and run our businesses online. It also takes away some of that imaginative, diffuse focus, expansive, intuitive energy that you can get from being out in the natural world. Oh, hold on. I've lost your sound.
Lost me sound.
Oh, there we go.
How can we cultivate that diffuse focus when if we don't have a mountain to go in? You mentioned walking around the block, or
yes, take a walk around the block whenever you can. And there's no bad weather, only bad gear. So just get yourself a proper jacket or hat or shoes or whatever, and get out there. In addition to that, things like if you're on a ground floor, going outside to where you have kind of a clear view of the horizon. So finding somewhere where you can find a clear view of the horizon, even looking to the horizon will allow you to have some more of that. It also helps your eyes not get so focused and tense from looking at a computer screen all day. So it's actually physically healthy too. But the concept of looking off to the horizon allows you to move back into that diffuse focus of freedom and expansiveness that when you're stuck in the notification world, you get into this like narrower and narrower focus. And then if you can't do any of that because you're in maybe a grossly urban environment where there's just blockades all around you of high rises, finding things like plants. Can you put plants on your desk? Or can you go look at the bushes outside? Can you look at the manicured, on many urban sidewalks, they'll have those manicured little trees with little bushes around them. Can you go seek the natural beauty that even is in the concrete environment of the urban city life? And if that just is a tiny little succulent plant on your desk, you could spend hours just looking at a succulent plant and imagining and noticing and touching it and having that connection to like what the leaves feel like and how it changes over the seasons. I think those are some of the ways you can bring it into your life, but also find a way to get to nature. Find a way to get there. It's not that far away, no matter where you are in the world. And the money and time spent to get there will pale in comparison to the mind-blowing experience you'll have. Even if you're not a mountain climber, to just visit a place like where you lived in Cusco, or to go to a national park in the US, or I've been to the Lake District in the UK, to just even go that and walk the grounds, the manicured grounds, even that is a mind-blowing experience and well worth the time and money it will take to get there.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm very grateful for where I live in Cusco because it's only 5 or 10 minutes and I'm right in the mountains. So
I love it.
I just walk there, but it's at 11,000 feet to start with. So it's not far to go there to get into the mountains. So we're coming to the end of the interview. Is there anything else you want to share around climbing and intuition and business?
Yeah, I always like the final wrap-up thoughts. Whether it's climbing or ballet or jiu-jitsu or yoga, find a movement practice that allows some of what we've talked about today to show up in your own life. You can't beat the embodiment that a movement practice gives you for enhancing and supporting your intuition that's already within you.
Yeah, I think if we move our bodies in new ways, sometimes new thoughts come to us. I know that's true for me.
Absolutely. You'll also pull out old thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, it clears old patterns.
Yep. Yeah.
So I've got some questions I ask everyone on the show, which is, first one is, why are you proud to use your intuition in your business?
That's a great question. I can't imagine not using it. And it feels more empowering to use it, because truly we are intuitive beings. And I maybe not everybody feels this way. I've always been quite intuitive, even as a child. And so it feels the most natural to do that. And anytime I forget about it, maybe I get caught up in the like stress, oh my gosh, something has hit the fan, bad things are happening, and I can forget for a moment. I'll be doing that like panic mode. And then something comes and knocks me out from the side in my brain and goes, wait a minute. Return to the embodiment, return to the intuition here. You're going to be fine. Why are you playing into the story, the made up story that this whole thing is a panicked mess and that bad things are going to continue to happen after this? Like, you can squash the panic instantly by returning to your intuition. So why not run your business in that way? What have you got to lose running your business that way?
Maybe your ego.
Some people would like not to lose that.
And then I'm on a mission to help every entrepreneur to openly use their intuition at work so they'll make more money and be happier. And also because I think if every business leader did that, they'd make less dumbass decisions that hurt other people on the planet. So,
yep.
So what would it take to make business intuition more openly used this year?
I certainly think that for me, at least, sharing more about the process of how I make my business decisions and why I do the things I do helps that. Because I think in my early years as a business owner, I fell into that story that you shouldn't share the behind the scenes stuff until you're like 55 and you've got umpteen million business successes behind your, in your pocket. But in reality, sharing the process as you go through it or why you do the things you do, no one's going to steal the idea. And even if they do, fine, it's still going to be different from your idea. And more so, you want other people to have a process like what you're talking about. But also too, it provides a human element that I think the customer enjoys hearing and seeing. And so when instead of just confidently making these decisions and executing on them, that's all well and good. But that's actually also not as easy to connect to as someone who goes, I've created this space to find some intuition. Here's what came to me. Here's what makes me nervous about it. But then I asked, what would it take to feel confident and successful in this, or, whatever framework someone else might use. I can't recommend the what would it takes enough though. But to do that is more humanistic too, to the person who's considering giving you their cash to exchange services or products or whatever. And so perhaps if more of us entrepreneurs could share that process of getting to the confident decision where we execute as business owners, that may help more people start to do that and start to wake up to that. And seems like it would help our bottom line because we'd be more human to the people buying from us.
That's a very inspiring thing to say. So if people want to find you online, what's the best ways to do that?
Thank you. Yes, I would love to share more with everybody who's found today's conversation interesting. 3 places I love to direct people to. Actually 4, I take that back. First one, if you want to follow with the climbing pictures and see some of these things we've talked about, you can go to my Instagram, which is instagram.com/Kate Galliett. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. Perfect. If you'd like to carry the conversation on and ask more questions about this and join the community that's talking about this, you can join us at facebook.com/fitforreallife. And then if you'd like to actually start moving and embodying some of this stuff, you can check out the movement program where I teach all of this, which is theunbreakablebody.com. And if you're like, well, I'm not ready to move yet, but I want to learn more about what you're talking about, you can read all my free articles at fitforreallife.com, which has close to 300 articles to teach you more about everything we've discussed today and then some.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing your intuition journey and all your mountain climbing stories with us, Kate.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me the space to do so. This has been a highlight of my week so far and probably my month, but we'll see what comes together. But you are always a highlight when I get to talk to you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a wonderful rest of your day.